Karen thinks that I'm a Costco worker and chokes me when I don't help her. About 6 years ago, I worked as a phone rep for a telecom company. They had a security rule that you needed to wear a lanyard with your photo ID tag visible at all times. Otherwise, security could get you into trouble. After a while of working there, I totally forgot that I was wearing it. After this following incident, I put myself in the habit of always removing it and putting it in my purse when I left work. One day after work, the man that I'll call my boyfriend husband and I stop at our local wholesale seller that begins with a C and ends with an O. I like to go during the week since it's less crowded and noisy. I have PTSD and borderline personality disorder, so crowds and loud noises are really hard for me to handle at times. The boyfriend husband is not only my partner in life but also acts as my emotional lifeline if I get triggered. He hates it when I refer to him as my service animal. Any hoozles, we've been here for about 10 minutes when my bladder reminds me that having a large tea at about 3 p.m. might not have been the best idea, and we should probably find the restroom soon. I grab my cell phone but leave my jacket and purse with my partner and head to the restroom. My partner walks me as far as he can and then waits with the cart in the books section that's about 20 feet or so away from where I can duck into the washrooms. I usually text him when I'm coming back out and he can meet up with me. Now, I have to admit, I was wearing a red dress shirt that day, but never in my dreams did I even expect to be mistaken as an employee who wears a red vest. So I'm on my way back to my partner, who I can see about 20 feet away, when a woman, now to be referred to as Stupid Lady, talks to me as I'm walking by her. "Do you know where the blonde hair dye is?" I say, no, sorry, and I start walking along my merry way to my partner. Then I hear, "Excuse me?" Okay, so that's trigger number 1, yelling at me. Yay! My heart rate goes up and butterflies start in my stomach. I stop dead in my tracks and turn back to her and just stare at her. What the heck? She stalks up to me and practically snarls, "Where do you think you're going?" She's like less than a foot away from me, leaning forward in a very combative stance. Trigger number 2, invading my personal space. I can feel my face growing red and hot as I get angry and panicked. I say, "Excuse me?" "You need to do your job and help me. Help me find the blonde hair dye." I then realize that she thinks that I work there and that I should probably defuse the situation and get my triggered butt out of there. So I do the stupid thing and speak to her as I'm trying to get away from her and over to my partner so I can calm down. I see him out of the corner of my eye as I start to turn, and that he's noticed me and he's coming towards me. While this is happening, I'm saying to the lady, "I'm sorry, I don't work." Trigger 3, grab my lanyard and pull on it, effectively strangling me. We have a winner, folks. She-Hulk is now engaged. Warning, warning. Yes, so she actually grabbed my lanyard and pulled on it so I couldn't leave. And the world for me disappeared completely. You should note that in the past I've had 2 reactions depending on the triggers. If she hadn't grabbed my lanyard, I probably would have turned into a blubbering mess and hyperventilated myself into unconsciousness as well. I've had crying moments when people cut in front of me in the supermarket. I'm told that I froze for a moment, shrieked, knocked her away from me, and then lunged at her with my hands out. Fortunately, my partner has the reflexes of a cheetah and managed to intercept me before I got a chance to rip her eyes or quite possibly throat out. He gets me into the floor where I dissolve into tears. The next thing I know is that yes, indeed, I am on the floor. I've been crying. There's not only several employees and managers, but there's also security. I flip out and dissolve into sorries and tears again. I hear Stupid Lady shrieking at the manager for hiring unstable people to work in the store, and "I want to press charges and sue the store." The manager is trying to get a word in edgewise that I don't actually work here. My partner, however, is being awesome and helping me calm down. Once I'm just down to shaking, he puts my coat around my shoulders, stands up and walks calmly towards the lady and the manager. A word of note about my partner, he's a goofball. He loves to joke and kid around. He's the king of dry wit and bad puns. He's almost always smiling, except for when he's mad. He shuts down and becomes very still and quiet. It's creepy and scary. Until that day, I hadn't really seen it directed at another living human being at the time. Up until then, it was just rages at video games. As the lady is screaming, "I want her arrested and charged for assaulting me. Just wait until I speak to my lawyer. I'm going to own your butt when I'm through with you." He says, Go ahead and call the police. It won't do you any good. She turns on him and practically growls at him, You stay out of this. No, you can shut your stupid mouth and listen to someone else for once, or if you don't shut it, I'll finish what my wife started. He said this calmly and quietly, only emphasizing that I was his wife. Her mouth snaps shut and she gets a little bug-eyed. As I was saying, call the police. I want to press charges on behalf of my wife against this woman for assaulting her. Also, please call an ambulance. She has red marks on her neck from where this woman tried to strangle my wife. And yes, he really did snarl the word woman. It was freaky. She protests, I didn't know such thing. Yes, you did. He projected that. He didn't yell, it was just heard over the stupid lady's flip-out. Again, her mouth snaps closed and she's even more bug-eyed than before. There are what? 5, 6 cameras pointed in this area? My wife tried to leave and this woman grabbed her tag holder and pulled her back so hard that she's left marks on her neck. My wife, who has PTSD, was triggered by that and tried to fight back. She had no control, and we have documentation from her doctors in regards to that in the car if you need it. Well, Costco shouldn't be employing people with mental issues where they can hurt normal people. She should be locked up and… Listen, you stupid, ignorant witch. He didn't use the word witch, by the way. If you'd get your head out of your butt for even a microsecond, you'd have realized that she does not work here and you have criminally assaulted another customer. Am I getting through your little pea brain now? And yes, he lost his cool completely with her at the end of that. I love this man deeply. He's my knight in slightly dented and rusting armor. He's my lifeline and my little bit of sanity when mine takes a brief vacation. But when he gets mad, it's time to step back and calm down. The woman went white and took a step back away from us. She looked at him, the manager, me, and then back to my partner and then the manager. The manager just shrugged. I tried to explain that to you. Stupid lady then dissolves into apologies and is trying to backpedal her stupid butt out of there before she got herself into even more trouble. And then backpedaled into the police officers the store had already called. To make an already long story a bit shorter, we explained our side, she explained hers. The manager showed the video, they took pictures of my neck, and the stupid lady got a nice new pair of stainless steel bracelets. Me? I got a trip to the emergency, x-rays, more pictures, and then some lovely anti-anxiety meds, and I was a zombie for about a week afterwards, and then a nervous wreck for about 3 months after. Stupid lady made a deal and got off with probation, and we got victims' compensation. That awful human being had to pay me restitution. Unfortunately, I couldn't go into a store that begins with C and ends with O for about a year without anxiety medication. In short, got mistaken for an employee, became gamma-induced PTSD She-Hulk and ignorant lady, got a new pair of bracelets from the police. My God, I've never run into a customer who thought that physically manhandling an employee would be in any way advisable. Even if you were actually an employee and she decided to go to court with you, surely Costco would actually have a fair shot at winning and you'd have some chances of countersuing due to the fact that she was on multiple cameras choking you with a lanyard. There's also another disturbing element to this. She assumed that strangling an employee was fine and didn't even contemplate that she could be doing anything wrong until it was pointed out that it wasn't a minimum wage staff member, but another customer. So apparently non-employees are actual human beings worthy of personal space and respect, but Costco employees aren't. Sadly, this is probably a very common way of thinking for some, with service people of all kinds. I'd like to think that this lady was more courteous and considerate going forward, but the unfortunate reality is that she probably just chose her victims a lot more carefully, so that she could continue to ride that sweet, sweet power high without having to deal with any of the fallout. Still, at least you got some of her money. That probably hurt her, and she almost certainly deserved that. I hope your recovery is coming along well, and that maybe the horrors of 2020 gave you the silver lining of more personal space when you went to do your shopping in the future. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Try to be more like the other tellers. I worked as a bank teller. The other tellers were all female. Our sales and service manager expected us to greet customers warmly the second they entered from across the bank. Hello there! Hi! Welcome to the US Bank. It was even turned into a competition. When he heard or noticed tellers greeting customers, he gave them a point on his tally. My greeting strategy was to wait for initial eye contact after they entered the building and began approaching my window, and then say hello in a friendly way and give a polite little head nod and smile. This was apparently unsatisfactory. I was given a talking to because I wasn't bubbly enough. It was pointed out to me how well the other tellers were greeting people walking in, how many points they all had accumulated, and I was told I needed to be more like my female co-workers. This sounded great in theory, but I'm a 6'4", 290-pound male, and I knew it would be easy to show them the error of their ways. The next person entering the bank received a bellowing, sing-songy, "Hi there, welcome to the US Bank," from 60 feet away with a dozen people in between. To say it startled the crap out of everyone in the bank would be an understatement. I was informed my polite hello and nod would be fine going forward. Now, I'm sure that this is an unfair description of our very funny author, but what I'm essentially imagining is a sweet old lady going in to sort out some details about her pension and being greeted by what seems like to her a cave troll thundering towards her and shouting a greeting at the top of its lungs, one of its arms stretched overhead, either to wave or clobber her into the ground. It's objectively hilarious to me, but I'm sure some customers would disagree. Also, generally I find places like this just a little bit creepy, as someone who generally speaking wants to avoid human contact wherever necessary. But once you went back to your old method of greeting, you probably would have been the winner on another score your overbearing manager almost certainly wasn't keeping. Employee who's annoyed the fewest customers today. Revenge is best served frozen. We don't own a car and live at the end of a cul-de-sac. I have people use my driveway all the time to turn around. For those who don't know, a cul-de-sac can also be used to describe a street with no exit, which is exactly where my home is. It's easier for them to use my driveway than three-point turn their way out like Austin Powers. It's not a huge deal to me, a little annoying when they compact the snow and it's harder to shovel, but whatever. One of my neighbors had a ride service come to pick up their child every day. The van would park in my spot and begin honking at about 8 a.m. I worked nights at the time. Half the time he'd be half parked on my grass. I told my neighbor that I don't overly mind my spot being used, but not if he's going to honk like that every morning, and especially not if he's going to drive over what little lawn I have every time. She spoke with him, and he ignored it. I spoke with him and got, "What's your problem, man? It's not like you're using it." To which I repeated that I don't mind him using it if he stays off my grass and doesn't honk every morning, apparently suggesting he wait until the kid notices he's there, or, God forbid, him have to drag his butt out of the car to knock on a door was just ridiculous and inhumane of me. So I left a recycling bin at the foot of my driveway. He just ran over it. I called the dispatch for the ride service and was told they were subcontractors and technically self-employed, but they'll pass along the message. I woke up the next day to pounding on my door. This guy was mad. "How dare you call my boss, you stupid piece of crap? What the frick is wrong with you?" I say, "Well, it's quite simple. You were told not to use my driveway if you were going to drive over my lawn and wake me up every morning. Now, get off my doorstep. I'll sue you if I lose my job because of you. You've been warned. Don't trespass on my driveway or property again." The guy storms off in a huff, spouting obscenities. So this happened on a Thursday. The kids have the day off the next day, and it's supposed to be one of those delightful Canadian weekends where it drops to about minus 40 degrees Celsius. For my American friends, minus 40 is where Celsius and Fahrenheit meet up. So it's frickin' cold. So that night, I grabbed one of my more beat-up plastic garbage bins, made sure to plug all of the holes with a generous amount of duct tape, tack a sign on it that reads private property, driveway not for public use, and proceed to fill it to the brim with water. Now, before anyone thinks that I'm a jerk willing to potentially endanger the other kids in the car, I'd like to point out that my neighbor's kid is the first to be picked up, so it's just this guy in the car. Cue Monday morning. He sees the garbage can, backs up a bit more, and defiantly charges the garbage can as if to teach me a lesson, and proceeds to cause some pretty serious damage to the front end of his car. He gets out fuming, calls the cops, and comes pounding on my door screaming about how I'm going to buy him a new car and that I'm about to be arrested. The cops get there. "So let me make sure I understand the situation. He asked you not to park here if you couldn't refrain from honking, then warned you not to park here and put up a barrier. Now you expect him to be charged and pay for damages you caused yourself to your vehicle in an attempt to destroy his own personal property. I'll never forget the look on his face when the officer said, "Yeah, that's not how this works," and turned to me asking if I wanted to pursue charges for him damaging my personal property. I just gave him the most crap-eating grin I could muster and said, "Nah, I think we're good." And then I went back inside to enjoy a morning coffee while watching him from my kitchen window as he paced back and forth in the cold, waiting for a tow truck and having to call the company he worked for to explain why they needed to send out another driver to complete his route. For some closure here, no, I never saw him again. As for the police officer, I wasn't aware that it wasn't up to me to press charges, and he didn't say anything about it either. I assume he didn't really want to have to bother with the paperwork and thought I might have gotten upset if he had said, "Well, I don't see the need to press charges at this point." So he made it seem like it was my choice. My rationale here is that I'm somewhat lazy and would likely do the same. I was drinking morning coffee because they were 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. shifts, so night shifts but not quite overnights, and I usually got up at around 10 a.m. Every time he'd wake me up around 8 or so, I wouldn't be able to get back to sleep, hence why I needed him to stop. Yeah, look, I like to side with the little guy as much as anyone, and being a contractor for a ride service would normally qualify you as such, but the driver in this story was actively going out of his way to be unpleasant and to make the person whose property he was using's life difficult at this point. Generally, the underdogs we cheer on here on the channel try to avoid conflict until it's no longer possible. This driver sounds like he actively woke up, looked in the rearview mirror, and chose violence every day. Yet another story where you have to wonder what he was thinking when he called the cops or the authorities in question. You willingly rammed your car into someone else's property. What are you going to charge the person for? Having something on their own lawn? I can't imagine just going this much out of my way to get into a fight or show dominance every day. It's the height of insecurity. Hopefully this got him to show some humility going forward, or even better, made him change his assigned route or area every day. Because I'm desperately hoping that he was too smart to know that any revenge he took would easily make him the first suspect at this rate. But you never know, he seems pretty dumb. Remember cassette tapes? No, you're too young. I don't know what the deal has been lately, but older folk, namely my co-workers, have either been vastly underestimating my age or seem to think that certain technologies are much older than they actually are. For example, I was just talking to my co-worker yesterday about streaming services and mentioned how complicated it was to burn CDs back in the day when you wanted to add or remove songs from your playlist. My co-worker then says, "Remember cassette tapes? Oh no, you're too young for that. Back in the day, we had to..." And he goes on to mention the trouble with cassette tapes. After she finished, I mentioned that I do in fact remember cassette tapes and had a few of my own growing up. I genuinely think she didn't believe me. Stuff like this happens all the time. I also had a coworker not too long ago talk about how I'll never know the troubles of adjusting a TV antenna, and I definitely do, or using floppy disks. I was setting them up until 2009 in school actually, or looking for a payphone. It was how I called my parents to be picked up from the mall. I was born in '94, I'm not that young. I grew up with and most definitely remember all of these obsolete technologies. It's insane that those of us born in the 90s have gone through so many different forms of media in such a short period of time. Our family car trips went from cassettes to CDs to plugging in an MP3 player and then finally just streaming it all from a device by the end of my teenage years. At least that final particular form has been pretty stable now, even if all the different platforms that we use for streaming come and go. But yeah, get some perspective, older people. If the person you're talking to is over 20, they know what you're talking about. My stupid and ignorant sister asked my other sister and her boyfriend, who were dwarves, to be the flower girl and ring bearer in her wedding because she thought it would be cute. The title says it all here. I wish I was kidding. We're all over 30, no kids. Neither of them have developmental delays. My sister is a medical coder at the hospital and her boyfriend is an insurance underwriter. They're regular adults who happen to be under 4 feet tall. When they were asked to be in the wedding party, they thought they were being asked as bridesmaid and groomsmen, not in roles that children normally do. There are children invited to the wedding, but they're taller than my sister and her boyfriend, so they were asked instead because my bridal sister thinks it would be cute. I was stunned when she told me she had picked these roles for them and she didn't see the problem. I can't believe her ignorance, and both my sister and her boyfriend are obviously upset. She's asked them and they were hurt and insulted. Her fiancé was there when she phoned them and didn't seem to see anything wrong with the request. They won't be flying down for the wedding, and I'm not going to either. Obviously, we had to cut on the silence here in editing, but the narrator feels like he should point out that he stared open-mouthed at the screen for about 10 seconds after reading the title because, my god, that's just insane! How has this conversation not come up before if she's so clearly ignorant about this sort of thing after 30 years of growing up and being around her sister? Look, I'm all for breaking traditional weddings and having something niche and original, but slotting in two little people in an otherwise traditional ceremony in the place of children feels at the very least downright strange and at worst pretty tasteless as to their status as grown adults. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Or if you want to check out some great music, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot. Everything linked in the description.